Few things seem more helpful than good advice. When someone we care about is struggling, the impulse often feels automatic. We want to help. We want to solve the problem. We want to make the pain go away. So we offer suggestions, ideas, solutions, advice. And yet something surprising happens. Many people have experienced the frustration of receiving advice that was completely reasonable and completely ineffective. The advice made sense. The person understood it. They may have even agreed with it. Yet nothing changed. This raises an interesting question. If people often know what they should do, why don't they do it? And if advice is so valuable, why do therapists spend surprisingly little time giving it? For many people, therapy is imagined as a place where experts provide answers. A client arrives with a problem. The therapist identifies the solution. The client follows the advice. The problem improves. Simple, at least in theory. The reality is often far more complicated, because human beings rarely struggle due to a lack of information. Most people already know many things that would improve their lives. They know sleep matters. They know exercise helps. They know communication is important. They know they should probably spend less time on their phone. They know they should have that difficult conversation. They know they should set better boundaries. They know they should stop putting certain things off. The challenge is rarely knowledge. The challenge is something else, something deeper. A person may know exactly what they should do and still find themselves unable to do it. This is where many beginning therapists encounter an important lesson. People do not change simply because they are told the right answer. They change when they become ready, willing, and able to engage with that answer. And those are not always the same thing. This can feel counterintuitive. After all, advice seems logical. If someone is lost, give them directions. If someone has a problem, offer a solution. If someone is suffering, tell them what might help. Yet human beings are not machines waiting for the correct instruction. They are emotional, relational, complex, often contradictory. And the reasons people remain stuck are rarely as simple as a lack of information. Imagine someone says, "I'm unhappy in my job." A friend responds, "Just quit." The advice is straightforward, perhaps even sensible. Yet many people hearing this advice immediately feel something unexpected. Resistance, not because the advice is necessarily wrong, because the advice has skipped over the complexity. The person may have financial responsibilities, fear, loyalty, uncertainty, a lack of confidence, family expectations, a history of self-doubt. The advice addresses the situation. The person is still trying to understand themselves within the situation. Therapists learn to pay attention to this distinction. They become interested not only in what someone should do, but in what makes doing it difficult. This often changes the conversation entirely. Instead of asking, "What's the solution?" the therapist begins asking, "What is happening here? What makes this difficult? What keeps this pattern going? What needs to be understood before change becomes possible?" These questions may appear slower. In many cases, they are more effective because they address the actual obstacle. One of the most common signs that advice has arrived too early is a phrase many people recognize immediately. "Yes, but..." You've probably heard it. You may have said it yourself. A suggestion is offered. The person responds, "Yes, but..." A second suggestion follows. "Yes, but..." Another idea. Another solution. Another recommendation. Each one meets the same response. "Yes, but..." From the outside, this can appear frustrating. The helper begins wondering whether the person genuinely wants help. The struggling person begins feeling misunderstood. Both become frustrated. Yet something important is happening. The person is not rejecting the advice. They are revealing the complexity that the advice has not yet addressed. Every yes but contains information. Information about fears, concerns, beliefs, experiences, barriers. The therapist becomes curious about those barriers. Instead of fighting the resistance, they explore it. Interestingly, resistance often decreases when people feel understood. This is one reason therapists spend so much time listening before offering solutions. Listening is not a delay. Listening is information gathering. Not only information about the problem, information about the person. Because two people can have the same problem and require very different paths forward. One person struggles with confidence. Another struggles with grief. Another struggles with fear of rejection. Another struggles with shame. The visible problem may look identical. The internal experience may be entirely different. Advice tends to focus on behavior. Therapy often focuses on understanding. This does not mean therapists never give advice. They sometimes do. But they are often careful about when and how it is offered. Timing matters. Relationship matters. Readiness matters. Understanding matters. Advice delivered before understanding frequently feels hollow. Advice delivered after understanding often lands very differently. Think about a time when somebody gave you advice before fully understanding your situation. Perhaps they interrupted, jumped to conclusions, assumed they knew what was happening. Even if their advice was reasonable, there is a good chance part of you felt frustrated. Not because you wanted to remain stuck, because you wanted to be understood first. This is a deeply human experience. People often become more open to guidance after they feel heard, not before. This principle appears across many helping professions: coaching, counseling, psychotherapy, teaching, leadership, parenting. The order matters. Understand first, guide second. When the order is reversed, resistance often appears. There is another reason advice can be surprisingly ineffective. Advice frequently addresses behavior while ignoring emotion. Imagine someone says, "I know I should leave the relationship." The knowledge already exists. The person understands the logic. What they are struggling with may not be information. It may be fear, loneliness, attachment, grief, hope. Advice often speaks to the rational mind. Human beings are rarely influenced by rationality alone. Emotions matter. Relationships matter. Identity matters. This is why insight frequently creates more change than instruction. When people discover something for themselves, the experience feels different. The conclusion belongs to them. It is not imposed from outside. It emerges from within. Therapists often try to create conditions where this can happen, not because they are withholding answers, because self-generated insight tends to be more powerful than externally imposed solutions. Psychological research has repeatedly found that people are generally more committed to decisions they feel ownership over. This makes intuitive sense. We are far more likely to follow through on conclusions we genuinely believe than instructions we merely receive. This does not mean every insight arrives dramatically. Many emerge gradually. A person notices a pattern, recognizes a contradiction, connects two experiences, sees something from a new perspective. The therapist may help facilitate the process. The insight itself belongs to the client. And because it belongs to the client, it often carries greater weight. This can be difficult for helpers, especially caring helpers. When somebody we care about is suffering, we naturally want to relieve that suffering. Advice feels active. Listening feels passive. Solutions feel productive. Curiosity can feel slow. Yet experienced therapists often discover something surprising. The urge to provide advice is not always about the client. Sometimes it is about the therapist, or the helper, or the friend. Watching another person struggle can be uncomfortable. Advice allows us to reduce our own discomfort. We feel useful, effective, helpful. We are doing something. The challenge is that doing something is not always the same as helping. Therapists gradually learn to tolerate this discomfort. They learn to remain curious rather than rushing towards solutions. They trust that understanding itself can be valuable. This is one reason therapy can feel different from ordinary conversation. Many conversations revolve around solving. Therapy often revolves around exploring. The therapist is not asking, "How do we fix this immediately?" The therapist is asking, "What is really happening here?" That question frequently reveals things advice would have missed. A person who appears unmotivated may actually feel hopeless. A person who appears angry may actually feel hurt. A person who appears resistant may actually feel frightened. Advice offered too early can accidentally miss the deeper story. Therapists learn to listen for that story. Not because stories matter more than action, because meaningful action often depends upon understanding the story first. Perhaps this is why many clients eventually discover that therapy feels different from receiving advice. They expected answers. Instead, they encountered questions. They expected solutions. Instead, they encountered curiosity. They expected direction. Instead, they encountered understanding. And surprisingly often, that understanding helped them find their own direction. This may be one of the most misunderstood aspects of therapy. The goal is rarely to create dependence on expert answers. The goal is often the opposite: to help people develop a deeper relationship with themselves, to strengthen their ability to think, reflect, choose, understand, and act. Advice can sometimes point toward a destination. Understanding helps people make the journey. Because lasting change rarely occurs when people are simply told what to do. It often occurs when they discover why they do what they do, when they understand the fears beneath the behavior, the needs beneath the conflict, the emotions beneath the decision, the patterns beneath the problem. That understanding creates possibilities advice alone cannot create. And perhaps this is why experienced therapists become less interested in being the person with the answer. They become more interested in helping another person find their own. Not because answers are unimportant, but because the answers people discover for themselves often become the ones that truly change their lives. And in our next video, we'll explore another common misconception about therapy. Because if therapy isn't primarily about advice, what role do questions actually play? Why do therapists ask the questions they ask? And what are they listening for when they do? I'll see you there.